Hi guys, what's up? It's Ian from the Beaverton City Library, and I'm here to rave about 5 of my favorite picks from the Oregon Middle School Battle of the Books selections this year. So that's from the 2021 to 2022 list. So if you guys join your OBOB team, you'll get to read some of these. And even if you don't, I highly recommend reading them anyway because they're awesome. And if you don't read them, you're just going to be missing out. And as you can see, I've only got 4 books here, and that's because one was in such high demand that I couldn't even get a copy for this video. But I'm going to talk about it anyway because it's one of my favorite books that I've read in the past few weeks. So without further ado, here are my favorite selections from the 2021 to 2022 Oregon Middle School Battle of the Books selections list. This book is called It's Trevor Noah, Born a Crime. For those of you guys who don't recognize Trevor Noah, he's the popular host of The Daily Show on Comedy Central. He's also a comedian. He does stand-up, and he started out his career doing stand-up before he got his gig on The Daily Show. So The Daily Show is basically a show that takes different events from the news or different people from the news and satirizes them or parodies them. He also has guests on to talk about books and talk about current events and different things like that. And he also does different comedy skits on his show. So it's almost kind of like a late night show. Very funny show. But this book is actually about Trevor Noah's childhood growing up in apartheid-era South Africa. So for those of you guys who don't know, apartheid was a system of government instituted by a white minority to separate and control the black majority in the country in South Africa. And it was a deeply unjust, deeply racist system. It existed from 1948 up until the 1990s, although its actual history stretched back until to about the 1600s, as Trevor Noah discusses in this book. And then finally, in the early 1990s, Nelson Mandela was released from prison after 27 years, and he became South Africa's first black president who kind of had to figure out how he was going to unite the country after the apartheid system had finally kind of come apart. People weren't going to accept it anymore. So Trevor talks about growing up under this racist apartheid system in South Africa. His father was white and his mom was black, and under apartheid, white people and black people could not be in relationships. They couldn't get married, they couldn't live together, and they definitely couldn't have children together. So that's where the title of this book comes from, as Trevor says, Born a Crime. So he talks about going out with his mother, and he kind of had to pretend that he wasn't even her son. They couldn't even be close together. He would have to walk behind her, several feet. So he would think, so people would think that she was the housekeeper and that they weren't related by blood, because his mom might actually get arrested if people found out that she had a mixed race child, which was illegal at the time. So Trevor's mom had to go to all these ridiculous lengths to hide him. He talks about she didn't even want him to play outside because she was so afraid of getting arrested, and he had to play inside his family's yard most of the time. Different things like that. His father was never even acknowledged on his birth certificate. And so, as he got older and he wanted to play outside more with kids his age, he became acutely aware of this horrible, oppressive apartheid system. So he talks about growing up under that system, and he talks about wanting to write this book because he wanted people to know what he had experienced growing up and to really know the effects of what racism can do. So this book, while it tackles a dark subject, I would say it's not all happy, especially because we read about Trevor Noah not even really being able to have a normal childhood. So while it tackles a dark subject, Trevor Noah, like I said, is a comedian, so the book manages to be pretty funny, and he points out a lot about the absurdities of growing up under it. So if you guys are interested in history, you're interested in finding out who Trevor Noah is, and you just want a good nonfiction real read, I highly recommend this one. I thought it was a great book. It's called It's Trevor Noah, Born a Crime, and Stories from a South African Childhood. This is The Remarkable Journey of Coyote Sunrise by Dan Gemeinhart. And this book is about, of course, Coyote Sunrise, who is a normal kid who just happens to live on a repurposed school bus with her dad, Rodeo. And their 2 lives are spent traveling across the country And they've done this ever since Coyote's mom and sisters were killed in a tragic car accident. So Rodeo is kind of this, he's almost an old hippie, kind of someone who would have been more at home in the 1960s. But he has a strong work ethic and a really good sense of humor. And overall, he's a good dad to Coyote. But at the same time, he just patches over the pain that he feels from this enormous loss, from losing, members of their family. And he grapples with it every day. And so he can't really quite go back to face that. So they originally lived in Washington State. And one day they stop at a rest stop, and Coyote calls her grandmother to check in via payphone because her dad, of course, is strictly against cell phones. And she hears bad news. They are planning to demolish this park in her neighborhood in Washington State where they used to live. And her mom and she and her mom and sisters had buried this memory box in the park, and it was full of photos and different mementos. And so, of course, they had planned to come back together and dig that up years later when Coyote was older and kind of moving on in life, and they wanted to go back and see what they had buried. But Coyote realizes that once they pave over this park or build an apartment or whatever they're going to do to it, this memory box may get lost forever. So she vows to get back to Washington State as fast as she can so she can dig up this memory box before they get rid of the park. But of course, she knows that Rodeo is never ever going to want to go back there because that was the initial scene of the tragedy that the family suffered. So she has to trick him into driving 3,600 miles back over the next 4 days to get back so she can dig up the memory box before the park gets demolished. And along the way, they pick up a cat, and plus they pick up a bunch of really interesting, eccentric people throughout their journey. So this is kind of like the ultimate road trip story. I would recommend this book to anybody who likes good, realistic stories that also have some sense of humor to them and also have some kind of strange, eccentric characters in them. I would definitely recommend it if you guys like Stargirl, because Coyote, she's such a great main character, and she reminded me a little bit of Stargirl in the Jerry Spinelli book. And she also picks up a new kitten along the way. And at first she tries to hide it from Rodeo, which lasts all of about a day because, it's a kitten. And she names it Ivan after the one and only Ivan. So there's a lot of references to that book too. So if you guys like the one and only Ivan, you guys like Stargirl, or you just like road trip stories or good, good realistic stories in general, The Remarkable Journey of Coyote Sunrise is awesome. And this was actually one of my favorite books I've read in the past few weeks or past few months. I really enjoyed this one. Remarkable Journey of Coyote Sunrise by Dan Gemeinhart.